Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some good enough. Been a while. Hopefully, this time, I think it was the first time I reacted to good enough. I ended up having something go wrong in the rendering process, and it only rendered half of the video. Still don't know what the fuck happened there, but I don't think that issue should happen again. Uh, anyways, today we are going to be watching the most terrifying cults to ever exist, and I'm gonna see. Now, I disagreed. Well, what was the other thing he ranked? It was like torture or something like that, and I don't think he did that in any particular order. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna see if I agree with how he ranks the. That's what we're doing. So, anyways, that said and out of the way, let's dive in.
Let's start with the strange and slowly work our way towards the most terrifying ones on the list. Number 7, the Russian Doomsday Cult. The Russian Doomsday Cult would make
They're Russian. They're already top five.
international news in November of 2007, when around 35 of their members barricaded themselves inside of a small cave in Russia's Penza region. And when authorities went down to investigate and remove them from the cave, the cult members would respond by threatening to blow themselves up. With some of the members even bringing their children inside of the cave, police were left with no
Why?
option but to wait them out. But before I tell you how this all ends, let's first cover the origins of this mysterious group and how they got to that point. The cave dwellers were originally
The cave dwellers.
part of the Russian Orthodox Church, but they would end up leaving the church when a self-proclaimed prophet named Pyotr Kuznetsov convinced them that the world would soon be coming to an end. Pyotr would refer to
Was this during the Cold War? But he's calling it. I don't think he said anything about like Soviet Union.
his new followers as the Chosen Ones, which made them feel special. Pyotr would ban his followers from eating processed foods, watching TV, or handling money.
Okay, so this has to be post-Soviet collapse.
They would also reject barcodes, national identification numbers, and passports,
Yeah, definitely post-Soviet collapse.
since Pyotr convinced them that they all contained the mark of the beast. But after some time had gone by, his followers began to ask questions.
Hey, Piotr,
Yeah?
you know how you've been talking a whole lot about the end of the world and all?
Yeah?
Well, me and the others been wondering,
Why is he Southern?
well, when exactly is it?
Well,
What you mean?
God, I hate this is hideous. Hideous.
May to May 2008. Yeah, May 2008.
Okay, we're in the 2000s. We've got a specific time frame now.
Which was 6 months away. The group was then instructed to enter a small cave and patiently wait for the world to come to an end. The cult members entered the cave in November 2007, but conveniently enough, Pyotr would not be joining them. Instead, he had convinced his followers that since the world was ending, they would no longer need their personal possessions. With authorities speculating that he was busy selling off his followers' belongings, he was quickly arrested and taken into custody. If only he could have predicted his arrest. Okay, I'll see myself out. The cult members would oddly enough still remain inside of the cave, and 5 months would go by with no one entering or leaving. But on March
I don't know. I feel like these idiots kind of deserve it.
28th, 2008, 7 women
Except for the children.
finally had enough, exiting the cave and immediately seeking medical attention. A few days later, a portion of the cave would end up collapsing, leading more members to rage quit and exiting the cave. With some members still refusing to leave, the police would have the brilliant idea of bringing Pyotr down to the cave, where he would instruct his followers to exit. But they refused. And on May 16th, 2008, the last 9 members of the cult would finally emerge from the cave due to the toxic fumes produced by 2 of the members who had died over the winter. With authorities expecting their exit, they greeted them with a cow, since they refused to drink milk that contained a barcode.
I should have left him in the cave. Let them down.
As for Pyotr, authorities would discover that the man actually slept inside of a coffin, further solidifying the fact that he was completely insane, where he would end up inside of a psych ward. Number 6. Shinrikyo.
Paul?
Probably one of the most
Okay, but yeah, that cult was actually pretty tame because it didn't seem like they did anything to harm outsiders. They were just stupid to themselves and their family.
infamous and dangerous cults to have ever existed. In 1987, this cult would make themselves known to the world when a few of their members orchestrated the deadliest domestic attack in Japan's history, leaving 13 innocent people dead and over 6,000 injured. But before we
Damn.
get to that heinous attack, let's first cover how this cult began. The year is 1987. A man named Chizuo Matsumoto began to
I think I've heard of this one. Hold on.
distribute pamphlets, claiming to have reached a new level of enlightenment through meditation. The pamphlet advertised a yoga class where you can come and learn about his amazing discovery. But during these classes, he would spend his time preaching about the end of the world. And that should have probably been your cue to updog your way out the class.
What's that?
Nothing much, man. What's up with you?
I don't get it.
And over the course of a few years, he managed to garner dozens of loyal followers, naming the group Shinrikyo, which roughly translates to the Supreme Truth. And in 1992, Chizuo Matsumoto would gain even more followers when he released a book titled Declaring Myself the Christ, which had a picture of him on the cross as
Yep, I've heard this, man. Yep, I've heard of this one. I've seen that image
the
before.
cover. At its peak, the cult would grow to over tens of thousands of members that spanned over multiple countries. His followers would even state that if people would just take a moment to listen to their enlightened leader, they too would see the light. But without warning, on the morning of March 20th, 1995, tragedy would strike, when a total of 5 chemical weapon attacks took place in the Tokyo subway system, killing 13 innocent people and injuring around 6,000 others. The attacks would quickly backfire as the authorities began to arrest everyone involved, including the cult leader. These attacks were meant to initiate the apocalypse, and once the world had collapsed, the cult would rise to rule the world in the way that they saw fit. But instead, the attacks led the leader and 6 high-ranking members directly to death row, where they were held until their execution date, which came on July 6, 2018.
It took that long?
Number 5, Heaven's Gate.
It took up until 2018 to kill that dude? What the fuck? Okay, yeah, definitely worse. That gang is definitely worse than the first one. But yeah, only 13 dead. I'm assuming the kill count is only gonna get higher from here.
Heaven's Gate.
You know what would be funny is if the number 1 cult was the Catholic Church. Technically, by a very broad definition, it's a cult.
Was an American religion movement that began to garner a following in Southern California during the mid-1970s. The group has been characterized as a UFO religion cult, whatever
What?
the hell that means. The followers of this cult believed that they could transform themselves into immortal extraterrestrial beings once they rejected their human nature, something that they would refer to as reaching the next level, which
God.
I guess they ultimately did, but more on that later. The group was started by Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, who after confiding in each other would come to the conclusion that they were the 2 witnesses described in the book of Revelation.
How do people get to this point? How do their brains get so fucked? What? They don't get it.
which would make them prophets. Fully convinced, they would attend church groups where they would present themselves as the two. And I can only assume how funny that must have been. He broke the bread and gave it to them, saying, this is my body. Excuse me? Yeah? Sorry to interrupt, but I just want to let you guys know that, well, we are the two. What does that mean? Like, the two. I'm not following. You know, like what two? The two from the book of Revelations? Right. Get a load of this guy.
That's funny.
But somehow the two would begin to garner a following when they began to hand out flyers advertising their seminars, like this one, claiming to be from
Wait,
the
hold on. Is that a real fucking... Oh my god.
claiming to be from the next level,
I'm not
leaving their
reading that
higher
out
being
loud.
self to come down to earth to help others. And somehow they managed to recruit around 39 loyal followers. Now, one of
Ow.
the strangest and most terrifying thing about this cult was the fact that all male members were required to be castrated. Which we can all agree is a wild thing to just throw out. The group would first try to do the procedure in-house, almost killing one of their members. So all future castrations would take place at the local hospital. The group would be left in complete shock when one of the two founding leaders, Bonnie Nettles, would suddenly pass away. This would cause the entire cult's belief system to collapse, since they originally preached that all members were to ascend alive inside of a UFO. So Applewhite made a few adjustments to their beliefs and would come to the conclusion that only the person's soul would be taken by the spaceship. 12 years would go
Already
by,
shifting the
and the
goalpost.
members of Heaven's Gate grew tired of waiting. And on March 26, 1997, the San Diego County Sheriff's Department would discover a horrifying scene. Inside of a rented mansion laid 39 lifeless bodies, including the cult's leader, bringing Applewhite's revelations to fruition. And in his own words, the members of Heaven's Gate had finally graduated. Number 4, the Branch
Was that the ones that... No, they didn't drink the fruit punch, right? Fruit punch was a different one? Hold on. Temple. Yeah, Jonestown, I think, is the one I'm thinking of. They're also the most famous. Yeah. Spoiler, we're going too far ahead. Huh. Okay, I don't know if I would put Heaven's Gate above Shinrikyo. Because yeah, I think I would swap Heaven's Gate and Shinrikyo because Heaven's Gate only harmed themselves. They didn't harm any outsiders, whereas harmed a lot of outsiders, you know? And actually amassed a rather sizable following that could have been potentially very dangerous. Heaven's Gate was like 40 people. So I wouldn't put Heaven's Gate above Shinrikyo.
Davidians. This is one of the most insane cults to have ever existed. The Branch Davidians were an apocalyptic Christian cult founded in Texas in 1935 by a man named Victor Houteff. And in 1957, the cult would purchase 941 acres of land near Elk, Texas, where they would build a large community that would serve as their home and headquarters. But things wouldn't really start to heat up until 1987, when a man named David Koresh would take over as the cult's leader. And he was, of course, you guessed it, a self-proclaimed
idiot
prophet. According to David, he was appointed by God as a prophet with the task of bringing the day of judgment. But David's downfall would start when he began to illegally collect and stockpile dozens of guns and thousands of rounds of ammunition, since he was preparing for the upcoming apocalypse. And on February 28, 1993, federal agents would arrive at the cult's doorsteps with a search and arrest warrant in hand. But the Davidians cult members had no intentions of allowing them inside or arresting their leader. And within moments, gunshots began to go off. In the gunfire, 4 federal agents and 6 Davidians would end up losing their lives. But this was just the beginning. The cult members would go on to barricade themselves inside of their compound for 51 days. But eventually, the FBI was given the green light to enter, firing multiple tear gas canisters inside, and shortly after, the entire building would erupt in flames. And to this day, no one really knows who started the fire, but after it was lit, the standoff would end within the hour, with 76 Davidians and their leader perishing in the fire or by smoke inhalation. And for the high-ranking cult members who managed to escape with their lives, they would end up inside of a cell. Number 3.
Ooh, and that's another one where I don't know if I would put the Branch Davidians ahead of Aum Shinrikyo, because while they did kill outsiders, those specific outsiders weren't people going about their normal lives. Those were people that, very least, if you if you are signing up to be trained and become a cop, I'm going to assume you are going under the understanding that there's a likelihood of being shot at and potentially killed for your while doing your job. So yeah, like those were people that that were going there because it was their job. Whereas Aum Shinrikyo killed 13 people that were innocent, or that were just regular people, like on a train, I think, right? And injured like 6,000 others. And again, Aum Shinrikyo had several thousand cultists. So I think again, Aum Shinrikyo should rank higher, because what Aum Shinrikyo could have done is a whole lot more terrifying than what we've seen out of the potential harm that the Branch Davidians and Heaven's Gate could do. Heaven's Gate harmed no one outside of their cult. The Branch Davidians harmed 4 cops. But again, it seems like from the information presented, the Branch Davidians weren't about to go out with their guns and start shooting people, at least with the little bit of information that was given. If they were, then yeah, they're scary, but I don't think we were given a really precise count of how many Davidians there were. And I'm putting Aum Shinrikyo up to number 4. I think I would definitely have Heaven's Gate below the Davidians, though.
Order of the Solar Temple. This apocalyptic cult would make national headlines on October 4th, 1994, when 2 fires would break out in Switzerland, one at a farm and the other in a chalet. When the paramedics arrived at the scene, they would discover a total of 48 burned bodies across both locations. They had all been wearing white cloaks, but strangely enough, some of them also had a plastic bag over their heads. They were all laid out flat on the ground and in a circle. One of the sites was even surrounded by mirrors and the cult's symbols. On arrival, officers would also discover that the fires had been ignited with the remote control device. And since this was the early 1990s, they were clearly showing off. But these fires wouldn't be an isolated incident. In fact, this was just the beginning. 1 year later, on December 15th, 1995 in France, 16 burned bodies would be discovered, laying in the formation of a star. Then 2 years later, on March 22nd, 1997, 5 more members would be discovered in Canada. They were yet again set ablaze by a remote-controlled device. Now, here's the terrifying part. Remember those plastic bags? Well, apparently multiple cult members refused to drink the poison on the night of the sacrifice, where they were then held down against their will and had plastic bags placed over their heads.
Okay.
This was not a choice. Everyone had to participate. The reason why these cult members took part in these rituals was because they believed that the end of the world was near, and by leaving Earth, their souls would ascend to another planet, inevitably escaping the apocalypse. Number 2.
I mean, yeah, coming across those the ritualistic aspect of them is very terrifying. But again, as an outsider, now what they do to their own cult members is extremely fucked up, of course, right? And not disacknowledging that, but um for me, if they're going to be like nightmare fuel cults, they have to, in my opinion, pose a threat, a genuine threat to the well-being and safety of people outside of the cult. And thus far, the only cult that we've seen actively pose a threat to general society was Shinrikyo.
Movement for the restoration of the Ten Commandments of God. Could they not have thought of a shorter name?
No, right?
Now, this will probably be one of the most tragic endings to a cult that you will ever hear. But before I tell you how this all ends, let's first cover the cult's rise and beliefs. This was a religious movement that took place in Uganda from 1989 through the early 2000s. The group would claim to be a religious movement, garnering around 5,000 members at its peak. However, the rest of the world would categorize this group as a doomsday cult. The cult's beliefs were very simple. Members were strictly to follow the Ten Commandments. They thought that by doing so, they would escape the coming apocalypse. They actually feared breaking the commandments so much that a lot of the members outright refused to speak and would instead communicate using sign language. Adapting the
stupid.
classic winning strategy of
Stupid
you
joke.
can't lose if you don't play, which is a strategy that I have been using for years,
Same.
making my friends absolutely jealous, since they say stuff to me like, "You literally don't even leave the house. You don't do anything anymore. And what happened to you?" But don't worry, those are just words. It's so much better to know that you remain undefeated. The leaders of the cult
Facts.
would even claim to be able to directly talk to God,
Oh,
and
God.
being told when the world would come to an end, placing the date on December 31st, 1999. As soon as this date was announced, the cult members erupted in a frenzy, selling their livestock and all of their belongings for very cheap. The leaders would then instruct their members to give all of the money to the movement, which they gladly did. But eventually, the date of doomsday arrived, and surprise, nothing happened, causing the leaders to push the date back to March 17th, 2000. With the followers enraged and beginning to ask for their money back, the leaders
The fucking people, I'm sorry, but the people that fall for this bullshit are kind of fucking deserve it. I literally do not understand how you can fall for it. I don't. Like, the only people that I would genuinely feel sorry for are the people that are born into the cult and are raised up by the cult's propaganda. Those are the only people I feel like I can genuinely feel sympathy for. Everyone else, like, you join it as like an adult or something? No, you're just a fucking dumbass. Like,
could not afford to be wrong this time around. So on March 17th, 2000, all 530 members were instructed to attend a party
did they burn
inside
it?
of a boarded up church. But just moments after the last person arrived, the party would quickly come to an end. With the only entrance to the church being shut, the building quickly erupted in flames. With no way out, all 530 members would be trapped inside and slowly burned alive. Police would later discover that 2 of the 5 cult leaders never attended the party. And just 4 days after the church fire, police would investigate all of the cult's properties, discovering an additional 395 bodies. The bodies of members that had been poisoned just days before the party, raising the total body count to over 900. The 2 cult leaders that are believed to have orchestrated these attacks managed to escape the country before being captured, and to this day, they remain free. Number 1.
no fucking way. Okay, yeah, that's worse than Shinrikyo. Just because, one, they're still out there, and right, the potential that they could do this again, and they could even force themselves onto other people, people that would be outside of their cult. Yeah, no, they out of this list so far, they are number 2. So Shinrikyo, number 3, and Movement for the Restoration of the Ten Commandments of God is number 2. let's see. I think Jonestown is easily going to be number one. Let's see how what exactly he talks about here with Jonestown.
The People's Temple. This cult would become one of the most talked about tragedies in all of American history. With countless of documentaries made on the subject and word of a new movie currently in the works, it really goes to show just how much of an impact this cult has had on society. It would all begin in 1954 in Indianapolis, Indiana, when a communist man named Jim Jones opened up his own church, attracting people by offering healing services, claiming to heal all sorts of diseases. In the coming years, Jones would garner thousands of loyal followers, secretly using religion to further his political ideology. After a while, Jones would begin to get criticized for his views, leading him to move to California in 1965. And by the early 1970s, he had established the temple's headquarters in San Francisco. Old members would be tasked with recruiting, leading to massive growth, and eventually they would reach thousands of members.
Hey,
Yeah? What's up?
do you like Jesus?
What? Like our Lord and Savior Jesus?
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's
I guess.
horrifying.
He's cool.
cool. Want to like him with us?
I'm okay, man. Thanks.
Why?
I'm okay, brother. Appreciate the offer, though.
Why?
Why?
Just keep it moving, man.
Why?
Brother, try someone else.
Why?
Why?
All right, man, you're ridiculous. Just give me the flyer.
Yeah, but-
Why?
Okay, I can't do this. But the next step would come in 1974 when Jones would acquire close to 4,000 acres of remote land in Guyana in South America, a place he would call Jonestown, slowly sending over members as they would begin to build homes and inhabiting the land. He convinced his followers to move by selling them the vision of paradise, a place where they can live freely without the government getting involved. For Jones, creating a socialist society had always been his goal, and it was finally taking shape. By 1977, around 900 members lived on the compound, and this would also be the same year that Jones would permanently join them. But the moment he arrived, things quickly changed. Everyone was expected to work 8-hour days, followed by classes at night, where they would learn about socialism. Jones had effectively begun to brainwash his followers, even taking on the name Father. But everything would change on November 17th, 1978, when a politician named Leo Ryan and his team arrived at Jonestown to investigate claims of abuse. After the investigation was complete, Ryan would be ambushed at the airstrip, where he and 3 others would be fatally gunned down. Jones, knowing that the end was near, had a few helpers prepare a giant tub of grape-flavored drink, adding to it a concoction of drugs and cyanide. He would then instruct all of his followers to drink a cup. Not knowing what was in it, his followers blindly followed his instructions. And with that cup, they had all but sealed their fate. More than 900 people, including Jones, would end up dying shortly after. This incident would create the famous saying, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid," meaning to not blindly follow a leader or ideology without questioning or critical thinking, or you just might end up like the people at Jonestown.
You know, I don't know if Jonestown would be number one in terms of like how genuinely scary they are. Because again, that was like, yeah, but like, you know, as long as if you were a journalist and you just didn't go there, if you didn't go to Jonestown, you'd have been fine. But yeah, that one to me isn't as scary, I guess, as the restoration of the Ten Commandments, and I think it's purely because the leader of Jonestown died, whereas people behind the restoration of the Ten Commandments escaped, and got out. So yeah, I think I'm gonna put Jonestown at 2, just because it does deserve the attention that it gets because it is an absolutely massive thing. But yeah, this was the most terrifying cults to ever exist, with Goodenough's absolutely horrifying character design and artwork. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more. I will see you guys in the video. Peace.